It's not working well. He said, you know, on the phone, I said, really? He said, well, I don't have time to tell you about it because I'm working here, I got a job. But he said, it's not working very well. It's not. I said, I thought they're buying all Fords. He said, no, they're not buying all Fords. They're buying mostly, because the press said, mostly buying Fords. Oh, look closely. Of the American cars they're buying more Fords. Well, that's because nobody likes Chrysler and GM because we just bailed them out and they don't know what's going to happen. But Dave's point was that it's not very functional, it's not working, but we just spent $2 more billion. Billion. So we're headed down a path, and very few people are willing right now to stand up and say, what are we going to do about it? And I think we need to be aware of what's happening. I see that my friends here have the concerns about the Fed. We were just talking, I was talking to our accountant, and you know, my experience, I worked in state government, and I was at Governor Matt Blunt's chief of staff, and we implemented what's called the Missouri Accountability Portal. And in every single transaction of state government for the first time in the history of Missouri, and in fact any state in the Union, we put every transaction, every dollar spent from 2000 to today is on a website. You can go search. I recommend you go there. Yeah. You'll find really, really stupid, silly things, and you should yell about it. And I can tell you, in our office, we realized of a $22 billion budget, you're going to find some dumb things. But the best thing we could do is put this up and help more eyes find them. Because it's hard for a chief of staff or his team to find them. And when we found them, we got rid of them. And we got rid of people. And we changed what we were doing. And we did things like, why would we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to local newspapers to run advertisements that are legally required when you sell a piece of real estate or you do something, you have to put up notice, and then purchase from those same people who we just paid subscriptions to the paper? I mean, if you're going to pay somebody a lot of money, one of the things you just say, and I'd like you to throw in some, free papers, or at least negotiate a price. You don't pay, fair. You don't pay the street value. You get something. Those are the kinds of things that, if you're going to spend tax dollars, which we could all debate what they are, let's see what we're spending. Well, when we went to implement that, guess who was most upset? Two groups. Incumbents, because we did put every legislator's info up there, and that made them nervous because they're incumbents and they didn't want anybody to see what they were doing. And that's not unexpected. But the group that was the most upset, nervous, worried, saying you can't do this, there's that, was the bureaucrats. Because the bureaucrats are here generation after generation, and many of them are good people. I don't mean to malign workers who work hard. Most of them are good people. I don't want to judge them. But when you create massive structures, the accountability is harder and harder to require. It's a little bit like when we talk about law enforcement. If you have to call your local county prosecutor, he has to respond, or she has to respond a little bit better than if you try to call the Attorney General in D.C. That's one of the reasons why our system of government is set up to have sort of federalism layers and local control, because then the local people can influence what's going on. I mean, talk about MIAC, the MIAC report is damning enough in and of itself. And by the way, for the record, when the governor of the state of Missouri, Jay Nixon, said the MIAC was drafted under the previous administration, I object. I was there. We did not do this kind of thing. We wouldn't do this kind of thing. And we certainly, if some bureaucrat designed it, we certainly would have objected to it, and that would have never seen the light of day. What we know happened, because we saw it happen across the country, is as soon as the new administration came in, the pressure was coming down to start this kind of movement. Same thing we said earlier, that Tea Parties can be violent. Aren't they worried about that? The pressure coming from the Obama administration was, let's start to talk about people on the fringes of the other side as, sort of Saul Alinsky, identify the enemy and freeze them and cause them to. So that kind of thing, didn't happen in our watch, and I'd be surprised when people say that it doesn't pass the smell test. But more importantly, that when you pass the website was www.mapyourtaxes.mo.gov. It's really very interesting to see. But we put every transaction, and people got nervous. Bureaucrats, all of a sudden things changed. We got to change this, we got to do this, we got to do things better, we got a little bit more scrutiny, which is wonderful. Now, you do have to have yourself ready, if you're the elected official or whoever, to have the confidence to deal with the question like they came, which was, hey, what is it that you spent at Annie's bra shop? $10,000 at Annie's bra shop. And the answer turned out to be in corrections, when some of our women prisoners have have had surgery for cancer or other things, they have to have certain types of implements, whatever. I mean, so there's an answer, and we found it. But the most important thing is to have the confidence in your vision of what you're doing to do it. And when government grows and grows and grows, and bureaucracies grow and grow and grow, and we can talk about the size of the federal government, it's harder and harder to get accountability. So this issue of transparency is one of the best. A footnote, for the first time in about 25 years, more like 30, in this last administration, Governor Blunt, we reduced the number of workers. Now, it's going to sound to you like it doesn't sound like very much. It went from 64,000 workers down to 59,500. But that was hard work. We did it mostly by attrition, and we said, the size and scope. When someone went to hire someone, we really made them justify, do you need to replace them, or are you just putting bodies in? And that was the thing. That's hard to do. Ask any of these people, the hard to eliminate programs, and it takes hard work, it takes guts, it takes standing up, and it's what we need when we think about Washington, D.C. and the size and scope of government. It's just growing up. So transparency is a great tool, but it takes two things to do it right. One, you have to have the confidence as a leader to let the sun shine in. In other words, you have to believe that what you're doing is able to withstand the scrutiny of sunlight. It's not as easy as you think. And two, you have to be willing to really do it right, not just fake it. Currently, the stimulus has a great transparency. If you go to the site to check on the stimulus, it's not transparent. It just tells you what they're supposedly going to spend the money on, maybe someday. It's really just an advertisement, as opposed to, where's the money being spent, how's it being spent? How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful.
Good. And, but as to the first one, if you talk about audit the Fed, have you ever seen someone who's in charge of an organization, as Ben Bernanke, panic as much as he did when they said just audit the Fed? I mean, I tell people, if your argument is to end the Fed, the best, if you don't want to end the Fed, if you want to fight that question, the best thing you could do is audit the Fed and show how well it works. And show everybody.
You give those numbers without the Fed.
Right, but again, this is the problem with conservatives in the sense that we like to actually argue from facts, and we actually like to think things through and use empirical data, and the left tends to think, we're going for power, whatever it takes, we're going. But if you audit the Fed today, then the argument becomes much clearer about, because it's actually working much better nowadays than we've been in the past, it was abused, or whatever. Well, let's just audit it. And instead, when they audit the Fed, which I think has an incredible number of sponsors, and by the way, if I'm elected to Congress, there's no doubt, I would audit everybody. I think auditing is by far the best thing we can do to government. I think that these transparency efforts are just basically public audits. One of the problems with auditing something is, again, how you do it and who does it. If we're going to have an audit of the Fed, say, and it's done by Congress, that's not going to cut it, right? We have to have an audit done in a way that is transparent so that 1 million eyes, or 10 million, or 50 million can look and see things and object. And then I think we can have an argument about how things don't work. But currently, the speed and the scope of what's happening is making a lot of people forget these numbers and worry about lots of other things that are worth worrying about. And I'll comment on two of them, and then we'll take questions and visit. The first one is the health care bill. If you look in today's newspaper, you'll see Senator Claire McCaskill saying, there's no bill on the table. Why is everybody objecting? There's no bill on the table. Well, I don't know what table she's looking at, but the health care bill that was filed, that she needs to get the memo, Congressman Carnahan and Speaker Pelosi have been defending across the country, exists. It's there. The bill will not cut costs. It will drastically change your life, all of our lives. I think that there's many objectionable parts of the bill, and there's something for everybody. If you're a pro-lifer, there's abortion paid with tax dollars. If you happen to be a senior citizen, there's these kind of not compulsory, but sort of end-of-life sessions that you probably will be paid for.